Yeah, live. I just have to make sure I don't run over my dogs in my chair because they're hanging around behind me. So how are you? You've been on holiday, hey?
I've been on holiday. Yes, no, it's been good. The journey back was a bit of an odyssey. They cancelled two of my flights. They cancelled one flight and then they rebooked me, and they've cancelled the flight that they rebooked me on. So I got two cancelled flights
Oh
on one day.
no, that's just not
Anyway,
fun. That's exhausting.
I know we got here in the end, so it's all fine.
But you need a good sleep, if nothing else.
True. I know. No, I slept really well last night. I'm exhausted.
That's good. Well, not good that you're exhausted, but anyway, so let us not hang around. So I am big on telling my patients that sleep is like absolutely essential for hormone regulation. So we talk about how your body heals when it sleeps, how that's kind of the reason, simplistically, that it shuts down at night so that your body has the energy that it can use to filter out all of the waste and get you reset again for the next morning. We talk about how if you have poor sleep, it can disrupt your hormone regulation. It can affect your FSH and your luteinizing hormone, which are obviously crucial for fertility, for ovulation, etc. And also, if you have some specific issues, for example, endometriosis, which is an underlying base level cause of inflammation, how poor sleep can exacerbate the root cause of it. And same for PCOS as well. You know, if you have sleep disorders, how that can then increase your issues with, I don't know, things like what's it called, sleep apnea, etc. And then, of course, your body's not running properly then. So we talk about all of this kind of thing, but also interestingly as well, there is research out there that shows that when you are going through IVF, if you have poor sleep, then you have much reduced chance of getting pregnant through IVF. Your IVF is going to be less successful. So all of this ties in, and my ladies are well used to understanding, you know, me banging on about you need to sleep. But actually, sometimes we've got fun lives. We've got fun lives nowadays, and that doesn't mean that you can get you straight 8 hours. And especially if you're dealing with secondary infertility and you are running around after a child that you weren't running around your first time, that can affect your fertility. And, you know, how at that point do you start to introduce good sleep patterns and activities? So I thought it would be really interesting, because obviously you're the guru, if I'll let you loose and then we have a chat.
Sure. Thank you. Yes, I think you know, my God, you know, there's a ton of evidence to say that sleep is hugely important for pretty much every physiological function in our body. And, you know, and sleep is a normal physiological function. It's one of those things that our body requires to live, right? You know, it's like breathing. So if you know, you can stop yourself breathing, you can train to hold your breath for a long time, but you won't be able to do it indefinitely, because at some point our body needs oxygen. And then similar with sleep, you know, there are very kind of rare cases of kind of organic diseases where a person cannot sleep, just, you know, for no other reason that just they have, it's a genetic disease. It's very rare. But what we do know is that, you know, if in those very kind of few cases that we do see, if a person, they cannot sleep for more than 2 or 3 hours a night, truly, those patients succumb to a raft of diseases, you know, from, you know, immunodeficiencies to cancers, and invariably those things are fatal. So luckily, the majority of us, as I said, this is a very, very rare genetic disease. For the majority of us, this is a normal physiological function that comes if we let it. But yes, if we neglect it, you know, it's tied up to so many, you know, yes, definitely to brain hormones, growth hormone, to sugar and the sugar metabolism. So people who don't sleep well, or sleep too little, sleep too much, they tend to gain weight, because
and that ties into PCOS as well.
That ties in PCOS, infertility. You know, it's tied into, you know, cognitive performance and dementia later on in life. It's tied into athletic performance and recovery, and kind of an energy production. You know, you may not, if you're not sleeping well, your glycogen cycle is disrupted, so you may not have enough energy. You know, so it's tied to everything. The good part, I think, this is what I always tell my patients: unless you have insomnia or a sleeping disorder, sleep comes naturally. So the only thing we need to do is just to not kind of block it from coming. And I think this is where things like the overwhelming cause of any kind of disrupted sleep in this day and age is stress.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going back and forth with this. I think the main thing is to learn how to react to stress. Stress is inevitable, right? It's a price with staying alive. Some of it is good. We need a bit of stress to stay fit and kind of fighting. But how we react to it, I think, is the key. And learning to kind of relax, meditate, manage anxiety will help with sleep. Again, if you manage to relax and control your thoughts and ease into it, your cortisol levels go down. High cortisol interferes with sleep, and interferes with sugar metabolism, and interferes with recovery. It interferes with fertility. Again, it's a little bit of a circle, but yes. So I think my number one message would be: yes, you want to get good sleep. Yes, you shouldn't neglect it. Sleep. Don't sleep too little, don't sleep too much. But the main thing is that it's going to come naturally if you let it. And I would always concentrate on just letting it happen naturally first. Just relax, meditate.
So you mentioned something there that I thought was interesting. You were saying, sometimes we're just too stressed, and and I was saying, my ladies are busy, and for whatever reason, all of this ties in. If you go to bed and you are absolutely exhausted and you crash out into a deep sleep and you don't wake up, but you only get 5 hours. Because I think the common perception, and I know you don't necessarily agree with this, but the common perception is that if you get 6 to 8 hours sleep, that's your benchmark. Now, I know from our previous conversations that it's a personal thing, but can you just delve into that quality versus quantity, and how it affects individuals, and what factors to look out for what is right for you?
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a really good point. I'm glad you bring it up. So yes, there's a myth out there that says, we need around 8 hours sleep of a night on average, and it's just not true. Studies don't back it up. First of all, sleep is very individualized. So what one person finds adequate, another person may not. From a whole stack of observational studies, when we look at millions of people and we see how long they sleep, we ask them how long they sleep, and some of them go to a sleep lab where we actually measure how long they sleep versus how they perceive how long they sleep. We know that majority of people actually sleep between kind of 7.5 to 8 hours. Majority being around 7.5. So that's where that range lies. Having said that, there are people who manage on 6 hours a night, and they do fantastically well. Classically it would be a high achiever, the CEO of something. They sleep 6 hours and they function at a very high level. So clearly that is enough for them.
Is that, and maybe I'm going too deep into the whole rabbit hole now, so tell me if I am, but is that, do you know that because they're supplementing the 6 hours sleep perhaps with cortisone from the stress, these high achievers? So they're one's kind of supplementing the other.
I think ultimately it could be, but if they feel well and they feel optimal and they don't feel less stressed, then that's enough for them. Okay. So what we know from obviously there are different stages of sleep, but what we know again from studies and looking at relationship between sleep and long-term health is that there's an amount of core sleep per night which our body has to have to function, to survive, and that seems to be around the 5.5 hour mark, so 5 to 6. That is like deep sleep, and part of the REM, kind of rapid eye movement sleep when we dream. That is the core sleep that our body has to have during the day to function well, and that is the type of sleep that we will try to catch up on, so that our body will take it. So if you take an extreme example of for example, soldiers in battle, right? This active fighting, they don't know when they're sleeping, they're being shot at, it's extremely stressful. Sometimes they don't sleep for days and weeks. So they don't get the 5 hours that they need. When there are breaks in fighting, they will fall asleep standing on the battlefield. So this is our body taking that sleep that it absolutely needs to survive. And you will see that sometimes with people as well, in if they're so sleep deprived, and their body is lacking this 5.5 hours that it needs to survive, it will just try to take it. They will fall asleep everywhere. They'll fall asleep behind the wheel sometimes, but
yeah.
So I think, for me, when I talk to patients, I normally, finally, I work with patients who have insomnia, but kind of the acid test is normally to ask, how do you feel during the day? Do you fall asleep when you're just sitting down on a sofa and just trying to watch TV during the day? Mind you, not when you're at night and it's time to go to sleep, but just routinely during the day. Or if you're waiting in a queue somewhere to get your coffee in the morning, do you find yourself kind of dropping off to sleep then? If that doesn't happen, then chances are you are getting your core 5.5 hours, and everything else on top of it is then feeling, is what you need to be optimized.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not getting 5.5 hours for everyone. It's definitely too short for everyone to feel optimized. For fertility, certainly longer than that. But kind of this is where we are. We need to get those 5.5. Everything on top of it is very individual. You might need just 1 hour and be fine with 6. The studies show that the average, kind of the majority of people, are around 7.5. And when we look at kind of long-term longitudinal data, so if we follow up, and actually studies have been done when they followed up, I think, again, a couple of million people at Stanford and Harvard, and they plotted the relationship between the length of a person's sleep versus their health later in life and kind of risk of death of various causes. The relationship is like is a J curve. It's a letter J, with the lowest risk for any kind of disease around 7.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
If you shorter than that, your risk of dying from any kind of cause of disease is higher. If you sleep much longer than that, so 10 hours, your risk is actually, exponentially higher.
Because you're not using your lymphatic system, you're lying still for too long. And you're usually not drinking water either while you're sleeping.
Yeah,
so.
It's an observational study. So we know that, 7.5 hours is like the sweet spot. We don't know exactly why. So this wasn't like a proper, this was more observational. So it could be that, there are some conditions, health conditions, that are associated with longer sleep, that are also, a major cause of mortality. For example, obesity, where people are just, it's difficult to get out of bed. So that's why they stay in bed for so long. So they, that's why it registered. But definitely on the shorter end as well. So, if you're sleeping 5 hours a night, your risk of any disease, so all-cause mortality is kind of the scientific term, is greater.
Okay, so just to summarize that then, to make sure that I've got this right, because I talk about a fertility bandwidth. That's one of the things that I talk about. And if you're using too much of your bandwidth for everyday living, there's not enough left for fertility. Yeah. And so what we try and do is to increase this bandwidth that you've got for fertility by changing various things. So if we are talking about that structure within the sleep pattern, say you've got an average of 5.5 hours, which that's just for your daily living. So you need your ish, there or thereabouts. You need your 5.5 hours just to keep your body replenishing properly, to keep your cells working. If you get, say, 7.5 hours sleep, then this is the bandwidth then that can be used for all those nice to do things,
exactly,
such as fertility, because there's enough energy there to grow a baby. Then we're not just using.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
You got it. So with 5.5, you've got enough to survive, right? But that doesn't mean you're going to be fertile. It's just your body saying, okay, I'm alive here. If you want to be optimized, you want to be around the kind of the 7.5 hour mark. Yeah.
All right, cool. And so we were talking about how you can tell if you're getting enough sleep for you, for your body, for your personal situations. So say I'm in a coffee shop and I'm starting to drop off to sleep and I'm drinking the caffeine, which is a different thing altogether. But let's say this is what's going on. And I'm drinking the caffeine and I'm like, oh my God, I am so tired. Obviously, I can't just snatch a few minutes, or maybe some people do, but it's not ideal to snatch a few minutes. For people that have got busy lives, how do you suggest that they just claim some of that back if they're not able to get it at night? Because they've got kids waking up during the night or whatever happens, the husband that snores. Not from personal experience, obviously.
Yeah. Well, it's actually it's an interesting one. It's kind of a sideways, but we actually know most. It's funny, about the snoring husband. Is that most people, when you ask them, they say that they sleep better with with their partner in bed next to them. However, actually, if you put them in a sleep lab and actually measure the quality of their sleep, objectively, scientifically,
Yeah.
people sleep better on their own. Because of the snoring, because of the tossing and turning, the other person is turning and you're waking up. But that's just a sideway. But
This is actually probably too much information, but me and my husband have got 2 single beds that we've pushed together so that he can't bounce me out of bed.
Exactly. No, that's what I recommend my patients normally. Actually, that's one of the tricks. Either 2 single beds or you buy 2, mattresses.
Yeah.
So that so you don't feel every movement. But just to come back to getting the snippets of busy lives. So the good thing about the 5.5 hour core is that it can be taken in chunks. It does so. If you got a couple of hours in the night, and then maybe you have children and then napping, with the small children, and then napping, you nap with them. So you can the 5.5 hours that are needed for survival, you can just take them as whenever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't seem to matter. So our body will just gratefully use them. If you are if you're at that if that stage when you only sleeping 4 or 5 hours, your body will be, as you said, you'll be nodding off in the queue to for the coffee. So your body will be ready. You won't need 30 minutes of preparation. Your child is asleep in the cot, and this is what I used to do when I had my kids and they were young. And I was like, oh, he's asleep in the cot. Excellent. So it's right next to it. So the 5.5 hours you will get that way. That additional. This is because once you have the 5.5, you won't be napping quite so readily.
Yeah.
So then it might come down to trying to optimize the kind of all of the sleep hygiene and lifestyle measures as much as possible, so that you're creating a welcoming environment for the sleep to happen when you want it to happen.
Do you want to go into that a little bit then?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, these are kind of the good thing. The good thing about the sleep hygiene measures that there's plenty of them. They're widely available. But ideally, so what we want to do is we want to kind of increase the sleep drive towards the evening and decrease the wakefulness drive. So you want to make sure that all of your your sleep hormones, so the melatonin, gets stimulated the right time, and then that you've had enough of awake time during the day to kind of drive up your wakefulness, so drive down your wakefulness hormone, the adenosine. And so these are kind of common things. So you want to have as regular rising and going to bedtime as possible, pretty much every day of the week. You shouldn't be sleeping in on the weekends. You should be getting up at the same time. First thing in the morning, you want to try and get out and have a look at the sun and get your melatonin down as far as possible. Obviously, caffeinated beverages, they will keep you up if not, even if you don't notice it. So ideally, you want to sort of maybe have not more than 1 or 2 and be finished, before lunchtime if possible. Exercise, anything, if you have energy and you're exercising, anything strenuous, again, you want to finish that before 4 p.m. And if you want to kind of prepare your body for sleep, lighter forms of exercise like walking or, I think walking is probably walking, maybe very light cycling or very mild yoga. You can do that closer to bedtime. Planning meals as well. You shouldn't have a heavy dinner just before going to bed. You want to hopefully finish eating 4 to 2 hours before going to bed. Blue screen, blue light. So blue light and blue screen. Again, these are kind of small things, but you want to hopefully cut them out 1 or 2 hours before you go into bed. And then all the things, whatever, if you are an anxious person and you tend to overthink things, especially at night, there's a variety of techniques, and people find different things that work for them. But either having like a worry chair before you go to bed, where you maybe 1 or 2 hours before you get, where you sit down and you think about all the things that worry you, and then you leave them right there before you step into the bedroom, right? Some people find journaling helpful, but anything that will help you leave your worries
Yeah.
in the
That,
daytime.
that's a really good point. I've never heard of the worry chair before, but one of the things that they do talk about, it's really good though. One of the things they do talk about is when you're coming home from work and you're trying to get yourself into home mode, is every door that you go through, you close the door and you just let a little bit go. Go into the lift, the door closes, let a little bit go. Get to your house eventually, you've got car doors, whatever. You get to your house, that's your final step before you open the door and you walk in.
That's a great
Similar.
one as well. Actually, yes. And your last one is the door to your bedroom, where you walk in and you leave most of the kind of day thoughts behind. So, and it's just kind of, and people find warm showers or hot baths calming before going to bed, about an hour before going to bed, and then kind of in the bedroom. Again, it's difficult when the weather is hot, but you want to sort of try to keep the temperature cool, because your body, for your body to sleep well, your body temperature needs to drop throughout the night. So you kind of want to encourage that. And you notice when the weather is hot, people don't sleep so well. It's because our body temperature doesn't drop so well. So you do whatever you can to encourage a cool temperature in the bedroom. Block out curtains if you need to, so that woken up by the light before it's time. And thinking about those mattresses.
I was just thinking about the body temperature. It's really interesting because one of the things that we're trying to do from Good Sleep in my area is help people with their fertility and therefore hormone balance. If your liver's working too hot, then your temperature generally is raised. So the low temperature at night where your body fixes itself makes a lot of sense, because that's what your liver just needs to cool down as well. Obviously, it's processing all the excesses from the day. It's interesting how it all ties together.
It all ties together, of course. And then there's the immune system that recovers at night, and this our skin, hair, it's just absolutely, name it. There's so much that happens during sleep. You can always tell if a person isn't sleeping well, right? They don't look well.
And that's the thing. We talk about energy, and we talk about you think that you're not feeling great on the inside, and then someone will be able to say, "Oh, you okay today? What's wrong?" You can see energy or lack of energy in a person's face. So even though the actual energy is intangible, it is visible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's if you're not producing it on the inside, it's just hard to show up, right, in a positive way. And it affects your thoughts as well. And that's another thing. I think if you're running low on energy, and it's a vicious circle, because you can change your thoughts about sleep, right, or lack of sleep, and that will help you sleep better. But then also, by definition, insomnia and kind of sleep disorders are mostly characterized by this overwhelming feeling of fatigue and exhaustion, and this kind of negative thoughts that are just hanging over it. So if you haven't got the right energy, then yes, it's all kind of all broken, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Do you want to, we kind of plowed straight on in, and I did do a little introduction about on the promo for this, if you like, about how you give people resilience so that they can go to sleep all the time. They're not being driven out of sleep by external factors. But do you just want to tell people, if they're interested in looking you up, about what it is that you do on an ongoing basis for your patients?
Yes, my account is Sleep Healthy, and I help women sleep well and wake up refreshed. My program is CBT based, so we're working on restructuring and working with your thought process, so that you feel positive and welcoming about sleep, so the sleep is actually able to come. And then we change people's behavior. So I work with patients who normally have insomnia. They've had insomnia for quite some time, and so the result of insomnia is some behaviors that are counterintuitive. We think we're doing the right thing to make ourselves sleep better, but in fact we're actually having some maladaptive behaviors that interfere with sleep. So we fix those, and then the final step is kind of we rewire the physiology a little bit. So a little bit like training dogs. So we train our body to recognize that once we go to bed, this is the time to relax, and the bed is kind of a peaceful time when we let go of the worries and just sleep comes to us. So those are kind of the 3 steps.
And it's, how long a course is it? 8 weeks?
My course is actually 3 months.
3 months.
Most patients will see improvement within 3 to 4 weeks, but as I said, I normally work with patients who have tried everything else. They've been on medications for a very long time. We help to taper medications, and sometimes it helps people to have support for a little bit longer. And also, a lot of people are anxious when they hear about sleep scheduling and regular awake times, regular going to bed times. It tends to stress people unnecessarily. So I find, compared to other things that I've seen where they're going quite aggressively with scheduling, my program is longer because I prefer to do things gentler, because again, I am a recovered insomniac, and I know it would just freak me out no end if someone told me that from now on you have to get up at a certain time and you can't go to bed earlier than this. It's so rigid. It's when you're asking, I find that when you're asking people, I don't know if you find that as well, but if you're asking people to change their behavior and their lifestyle, there will be 1 or 2 who are like really committed and they just go, yeah, I'm going to do it. But for most people, it's the little gentle changes that accumulate, because the information is out there, right? It's like, we all know what to do, so why aren't we doing it? It's because it's hard. So you want to be a little bit gentler, but then those things stick, and over long term they accumulate.
Yeah, it's like a learned practice, because we're all practicing. But also as well, when you, maybe not for sleep, I'm not sure, but certainly with fertility, where people have, say for endometriosis, if we're talking about that, if I make too many changes, like I could tell you everything to do in week 1 and you could go do it, but your body is not going to be able to process that. You are going to end up with worse problems than we started out. So it's all about drip feeding, maybe for slightly different reasons, but it's a similar way that we're working.
No, but I agree. I think whenever and it's sometimes just overwhelming to people. You go like, oh my god, this diet, it's this and that, and it's too much, no matter how and then after 1 week they get exhausted and people lose their motivation. It's much easier to go and change one thing at a time, and then your body has, as I said, has a chance to adopt to it. Then maybe the next step isn't quite so hard, because you've already built a little bit of a foundation, as opposed to doing it all at once. It's just it's too much.
All right. So, do you have anything else to add?
No, I think hopefully this was helpful, and thanks so much.
It was great. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that, and I think anyone watching the video back will be as well. So I'm going to put this on the feed so people will be able to watch it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Karen.
See you later. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.